Welcome Superhero Pow! I'm your host nerd, Tom Fremgen. And it's time once again for the Best Cartoon Award Show, where we honor cartoon shows from the past with fictitious awards. This time we'll be looking at 1986. While Saturday morning cartoons were still going strong in 1986, the real action was in syndication, with like 12 new shows and a few new anime cartoons. To show off the strength of these syndicated cartoon shows, many of them were based on toy lines. And there were five feature films based on these syndicated cartoon shows. You had GoBots, the Rock Lords, My Little Pony, the movie, Heathcliff, the movie, Care Bears 2, A New Generation, and the big one, the Transformers movie. For more traditional features, you had Don Bluth's An American Tail with Steven Spielberg, and Disney had The Great Mouse Detective. But back to the TV shows. The awards up for grabs are the Best Action Show, the Best Comedy Show, the Best New Show, and of course the dreaded Worst New Show. Now let's get started on Saturday morning with CBS's lineup. They had 3 new cartoon shows, starting with Wildfire by Hanna-Barbera, which was kind of similar to DC Comics character Amethyst, Princess of Gemworld, as 13-year-old Sarah discovers she's a princess from the planet Darsha. With her protector, a talking horse, Wildfire, she has to defeat her evil aunt, Lady Diabolin. Then there was Teen Wolf, which was based on the popular movie starring Michael J. Fox, though he didn't voice the cartoon. Go figure. It would run for 2 seasons. Then there was Galaxy High by the great Japanese animation studio TMS. It was their second attempt to get a show in America, after the failure of Mighty Orbots. Just like with Mighty Orbots, while Americans wrote the scripts, including Chris, yes, the movie director Columbus, all the animation production was done by TMS. But despite being a superior production, just like Mighty Orbots, it failed to get a second season. For returning shows, there was the Berenstain Bears, who were in their second and final season. Then there was CBS's powerhouse, Jim Henson's Muppet Babies, which was in their 3rd season and would run for another 5. Then they had their anthology show, the CBS Story Break, which was in its 2nd of 3 seasons, with more of the hour-long specials, all of them based on books. And then for reruns, they had Hulk Hogan's Rockin' and Wrestlin'. But their big breakout hit from this season has to be the live-action show, Pee-wee's Playhouse. A cultural icon if ever there was one, Pee-wee's Playhouse ran for 5 seasons and probably should have ran for more. Moving over to NBC, they had 3 new shows as well, starting with Kissy Fur by Deke, which actually started as a few animated half-hour specials back in 1985. The show was about a young circus bear and his dad leaving the circus and trying to live in a small town. Note, they killed the mom in the special. Kissy Fur would run for 2 seasons. Then there was Foo-Fur by Hanna-Barbera. It was the adventures of a blue dog and his wacky friends. And of interesting note, both the furs, Kissy and Foo, were created by the animation artist vet, Phil Mendez. So he was having a great year in 1986, though Foo-Fur would only run for 1 season. Then they had Laser Tag Academy, based on the popular laser tag game. Not to be confused with Photon, but it was basically the same thing. It was produced by Ruby Spears and basically had nothing to do with the game laser tag, except for the premise, which was about a laser tag player from the future traveling back in time to 1986 to protect the kids who would invent laser tag from a time-traveling villain, Draxon Dreer. So they didn't play laser tag itself in the show, and the guns themselves were basically used as magic wands. Not guns because Saturday morning. NBC had 4 returning shows, with Disney's The Adventures of the Gummy Bears in its 2nd season, and it would run for a total of 6 seasons. The Smurfs were still chugging along in their 6th season. The Little Blue Guys would run for 9 seasons. Alvin and the Chipmunks was in its 4th season, and they would run for 8 seasons with a couple of title changes. Lastly, there was It's Punky Brewster, based on the child star Soleil Moon Frye's sitcom character of the same name. And she did do the voice herself. It was in its 2nd and final season. Over at ABC, they had 3 new shows as well, starting with The Flintstone Kids by Hanna-Barbera, of course. Thanks to the success of the Muppet Babies, turning popular classic characters into kids was becoming big business. So here we are with Fred, Wilma, Barney, and Betty, all as preteens running around and causing trouble. It would run for 2 seasons. Then there was Pound Puppies, again by Hanna-Barbera, based on the toy line by Tonka, which was about a bunch of cute dogs running a puppy orphanage while the evil Katrina Stoneheart tried to shut it down. Lastly, they had The Real Ghostbusters by Deke, based off the very popular movie by Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray, but not to be confused with Filmation's Ghostbusters. This very popular and very well done show would run for 7 seasons. For returning shows, ABC had Care Bears Family, which was a repackaging of the Care Bears cartoon from last season as it switched to a new animation studio, Nelvana. So this was actually the 2nd season, and it would run for a total of 4. 1 by Deke and 3 by Nelvana. Next was Ewoks, also by Nelvana, which was in its 2nd and final season, because George Lucas just refused to give us a Further Adventures of Luke Skywalker cartoon. Bastard. ABC's anthology show, Weekend Special, had some more animated hour programs, often chopped into 2 half hours in its 10th season. Then for reruns, ABC had The Littles by Deke, which had finished its 3-season run last year, and the Disney's Wuzzles, which only had 1 season from last year. For theatrical shorts, there was Bugs Bunny, still hanging in there with the Bugs and Tweety show, as it moved back to ABC this season for its 26th season, so to speak. Well, that's how it was for Saturday mornings. Now let's check out all the action in Syndication, where almost all the shows were based off a toy line, or at least connected to a toy line. Like The Centurions by Ruby Spears, which featured exoskeleton heroes with basically Army, Navy, and Air Force powers as they battled the evil cyborg Dr. Terror. And as was becoming common, it started with a 5-part miniseries, which upon being successful would get a full run of 65 episodes. 65 was the magic number because that's how many shows you needed to sell a rerun package. You see, animated shows are so expensive to make, the only way to really make money on them is in reruns. You get paid twice. So once a studio had that magic number of 65 episodes, they would stop spending money on making new ones. Next was Defenders of the Earth by Marvel Productions, combining 3 old newspaper strip heroes from King Features, Flash Gordon, Mandrake the Magician, and the Phantom, who all teamed up with their kids, to fight Flash's main villain, Ming the Merciless. Oh, and Mandrake's manservant, Lothar, was also given an upgrade to be more of a hero in his own right in the show. Then there was The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers by the fly-by-night company Transcom Media, powered by TMS Animation. The show featured 4 technologically enhanced, can you really call them cyborgs? Space Rangers keeping law and order in the new frontier of galactic colonization, dealing with various bad guys, including the Crown Empire. And as you can see, the show was heavily inspired by Westerns, as it ran for the magic 65 episodes. Then, in an effort not to pay the licensing fee, the powers that be at Filmation decided they could do their own Ghostbusters, based on their not-so-famous live-action TV show from 1975. But here it was much more cartoony and wacky, as the original characters' kids take over the ghost-busting business. And did it get 65 episodes? Yes, it did. Then there was Chuck Norris, Karate Commandos by Ruby Spears, which was inspired by the real karate champion and movie star Chuck Norris, of course. And he did voice the show. His team of martial artists would battle the evil organization Vulture and its leader, the Claw. Sadly, poor Chuck would only get the 5-episode miniseries. The Inhumanoids by Sunbow, which was actually the name of the bad guys, featuring Metalar, Decompose, and Tendril. The Inhumanoids set to conquer the world are opposed by EarthCorps, and the show was heavy with ecological themes. And it started out as just a mini-series of 7-minute episodes in the Super Sunday Package show. Then it was upgraded to a full half-hour show, but in the end it only lasted 8 episodes, when you glue all the little mini episodes into one big episode. Next there was Rambo, The Force of Freedom by Ruby Spears, based on the character immortalized by Sylvester Stallone in several rated R movies. Yeah, just like Chuck Norris, Rambo is teamed up with a group of soldiers to fight an evil organization, Savage, specialized administrators of vengeance, anarchy, and global extortion. Yikes. And their leader, General Warhawk. Unlike Chuck, Stallone did not voice the cartoon, but it survived past the 5-issue miniseries to get a full run of 65 episodes. Now, with the ongoing success of Thundercats, Rankin and Bass tried to do it again with Silverhawks. In an area of space called Limbo, the cyborgs, because they're cyborgs, right? The Silverhawks battled the evil alien crime boss, Monstar, and his mob. Again, expertly animated by the Pacific Animation Corps, whose history is crazy, but we don't have time for it now. And just as any good cartoon show should do at that time, Silverhawks got its 65 episodes. Next there was The Popples by Deke, featuring kids living with crazy, living stuffed animals, whose existence they had to hide from their parents. The Popples started out with a TV movie before getting a 13-episode run, but they would get a second season for a grand total of 23 episodes. Now, in a somewhat returning shows, there was My Little Pony and Friends by Sunbow. You see, the colorful little ponies, who had fairy tale-like adventures with witches and trolls, started out with a few TV specials before getting their 65-episode run in 1986. Not to mention their quite successful movie I mentioned earlier. But here, My Little Pony was packaged together with other new Hasbro toy cartoons, including the Glow Friends, which featured Baby Glowworm and other glow-in-the-dark bugs dealing with the evil Mulligans. Then there was Moon Dreamers, which was basically a knockoff of Rainbow Bright, except with nighttime star kids. Lastly, there was Mr. Potato Head Kids, which was about Mr. Potato Head's kids, I think, getting into typical cartoon kid trouble. For non-toy related syndicated cartoons, can you believe they even made some? There was Dennis the Menace by Deke, which was based on the popular comic strip of little Dennis and his friends causing trouble while not really meaning to, much to his neighbor Mr. Wilson's cringe. Dennis would not only run 65 episodes, but would get a bonus second season, so to speak, of 13 new episodes. So that's 78 episodes in total for the little tyke. And then on the fantastic world of Hanna-Barbera, after 21 years, Johnny Quest was back with new episodes. Although the only returning voice actors were for the evil Dr. Zinn and the dog Bandit. Hanna-Barbera had hoped for more, but this new run only lasted 13 episodes. Now for returning cartoon shows, the fantastic world of Hanna-Barbera also had the second season of Yogi's Treasure Hunt. It would run for a total of 3. Filmation's She-Ra was picked up for a second and final season. The girl pop band Gem was still finishing up its first season before getting its second season in 1987. Mask was getting a second season for a grand total of 75 episodes. Thundercats was just getting a new 5-episode miniseries, Thundercats Ho!, before kicking off their official second season in 1987. The Transformers were in their third season with a new cast after all the killings in the movie. And G.I. Joe was in its second and final season over at Marvel Productions. In 1989, though, it would be back over at DiC. Okay, that's it. But wait, you may have noticed we have forgotten some shows. Well, we're going to put them all together in their own little category of anime shows, and we'll throw in a few other foreign shows as well. Starting with Harmony Gold, which was still riding high on the success of Robotech from last year. This year gave us Captain Harlock and the Queen of 1,000 Years, which combined the two Japanese shows, Space Pirate Captain Harlock with Queen Millennium. Then Saban brought us Macron 1. You just know they were trying to riff on the name Macross, right? Well, Macron 1 glued together the shows Go Shogun and the Great Military Operation in Subspace Strungle, which is what happens when you translate literally. And then Sandy Frank decided to re-edit and re-voice their former hit Battle of the Planets and rebranding it as G-Force, Guardians of Space, which was originally the anime show Space Ninja Team Gatchaman. And coming back for more was the robot that started it all in 1984, Voltron, as World Events Productions commissioned a TV movie, Voltron Fleet of Doom, solely for the American audience. Lastly, we'll toss in two French-Japanese productions that hit the airwaves in 1986. Starting with Ulysses 31, which was actually produced back in 1981, taking the classic story of the Odyssey and reimagining it as a space opera. And over on cable, Nickelodeon started airing The Mysterious Cities of Gold, which was produced back in 1982. The show was loosely based on the book The King's Fifth. And I mean loosely. I know, I read it. The Mysterious Cities of Gold was about a young Spanish boy getting wrapped up in a Spanish exploration adventure to find and loot the fabled South American city of gold. And that's it. Over 20 new shows. Now, before we hand out the major awards, let's do a little mini award for the Best New Anime/Foreign Show for 1986, which goes to Ulysses 31. Just a great action-adventure show with some good music by Shuki Levy and Han Saban, plus some really good animation.
I will discover the kingdom of Hades and the route back to Earth, I promise you. Don't cry.
Don't cry.
All right, let's move on to the proper awards now. The best action cartoon for 1986 is Silverhawks. Let's face it, there are a couple of new good action cartoons to choose from. But with its slick style, Silverhawks was a cut above. About the only bad thing you could say about the show was it was copying Thundercats too much. But since it was by the same studio, why not? It's a shame they never did a crossover. And just look at those scenes. Silverhawk looks great. Moving on, the best comedy cartoon of 1986 is The Real Ghostbusters. Now, this was the hard category this season, as the best comedy cartoons for kids have slapstick. But slapstick was still outlawed at this time. You don't want to encourage kids to hit each other. Therefore, most of the funny cartoon shows were just cute adventure shows like the Smurfs. So in that regard, we give it to The Real Ghostbusters. Probably should have won Best New Cartoon. But as all the other comedies lacked wit and timing, The Real Ghostbusters was the only clear choice.
Think about it, Peter. When a vampire bites someone, he becomes a vampire, right?
Right. And when a werewolf bites someone, he becomes a werewolf too.
Precisely. So what happens when a werewolf bites a vampire and a vampire bites a werewolf?
Man, talk about democracy in action.
Now, before we get to the best new cartoon show, the worst cartoon show of 1986 is Laser Tag. How you greenlight a show that can't even do its premise is beyond me. It's like trying to do a Pokemon show without Pokemon battles. Actually, it's probably even worse than that, because, at least the Pokemon are cute. But if you're going to do a show called Laser Tag, but no one in the show is playing laser tag, what are we doing here? And on some level, it seems like Ruby Spears, who were creating 4 new shows for this season, was hip to this, because it sure looks like they used their B or even C time to put this show together. Yikes.
That was close. Everything's back to normal.
And now, the best new cartoon for 1986 is The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers, a show that kind of flew under the radar, not being from a big studio and not having a high-profile toy line. The producers spent money on this baby, though, and boy does it show. Just one of the best animated shows of the 1980s, with great designs, great music, great scripts, and great adventures. The only flaw you could find with it is maybe it was too mature and younger kids couldn't get into it. And maybe the whole space cowboy thing just wasn't popular enough. Ask Bravestar or even Firefly. But that doesn't stop Galaxy Rangers from being one of the best cartoon shows ever.
Peters, get rid of him.
I quit, sir.
Peters!
All right, there you go. What did you think of our picks? Do you think the real Ghostbusters should have taken the top spot? It was highly debated here. And how many of these toy lines did you own? Surprisingly, I didn't have any of them. At this point, I was pouring all my money into Robotech, which honestly really wasn't that good of a toy line. Anyway, thanks for spending time with me. And if you could be so kind to like, subscribe, and notify, I promise not to explain how for decades I thought Foofer, Woofer, and Blueford were all the same dog.